Protecting Children from Online Pedophiles. In this panel, we'll hear from Chris Hansen of NBC News, who did a series on the sexual exploitation of teenagers. This portion of the House Commerce Subcommittee hearing is about 2 hours.
This hearing will come to order, and I want to thank the panel of witnesses for taking time from their busy schedules to be with us today. Today we are holding the first day of a two-day hearing entitled Making the Internet Safe for Kids, the Role of Internet Service Providers and Social Networking Sites. Our previous hearings explored issues relating to the sexual exploitation of children over the Internet. Those hearings made it apparent that we have a long way to go in making the Internet a safe place for our children. We heard wrenching testimony from two child victims of Internet predators, Justin Berry and Masha Allen. Their stories brought to life the horrors that can occur on the Internet to children. We also heard law enforcement agency representatives express their concern about the staggering number of children and child predators and pedophiles on the Internet today. The Internet has created what one of our witnesses called a virtual Sears catalog for pedophiles to find and communicate with children. Because the Internet has become, as you well know, a social gathering place for children. We must minimize the likelihood of our children being exploited over the Internet, and we must do everything possible to assist law enforcement in their efforts to investigate and prosecute child predators. I want to thank our first panel witness, Mr. Chris Hansen from Dateline NBC, for testifying today about his riveting investigative series called To Catch a Predator. This series showed how child predators in 5 different cities across America chatted with someone over the Internet they believed to be a 13 or 14-year-old child, and then actually traveled to a home to meet the supposed child for sexual activity. Mr. Hansen pointed out very clearly, and I think we'll talk about it today, how predators come from all walks of life and are all different ages and backgrounds, and it's difficult to predict who really is a child predator. There certainly does not appear to be any profile of who over the Internet may be a child predator. This is particularly important for parents and children to understand, and I look forward to hearing more from Mr. Hansen about his investigative work in this series. I want to thank also the representatives of the Internet service providers who are here today. We look forward to their testimony explaining what they are doing to assist law enforcement in cases involving the sexual exploitation of children over the Internet, and what measures the companies are taking to minimize opportunities to sexually exploit children from their networks. We certainly understand that Internet service providers are not law enforcement agencies, and I certainly am not asking them to become that. I do believe that having images or links to images that may be child pornography are, at a minimum, violations of their terms of use, and may be criminal sites as well. Taking measure to proactively look for this content on your network, report this content to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children and to law enforcement will go a long way towards reducing access that pedophiles have websites with sexually exploitive images of children. If companies have concerns about performing proactive searches of this content, we hope you will express that today. This would be the appropriate time to talk about your concerns if you think it provides a burden or produces a burden on your company. I understand that several companies have undertaken proactive searching and filtering of these sites and images, and we look forward to hearing about that in their testimony today. I'm also interested in learning about the Internet service providers' data retention policies for IP addresses in particular. A witness at the subcommittee's prior hearing, Flint Waters, testified that in connection to an investigation about a child predator on the Internet, he was unable to get subscriber information for a 3-day-old IP address from an Internet service provider. That is unacceptable. Law enforcement agency representatives have testified that retaining these IP addresses is critical to their being able to catch these people. I understand that several companies today and tomorrow will make announcement about ways they are enhancing their networks to help combat the exploitation of children on their networks. Whether it is increasing the length of time they retain the IP address, enhancing their filtering devices, or providing additional safety measures for parents and children to employ on their network, I commend all of those efforts, and we look forward to hearing more about it this morning. We have a simple message. Let's make it as difficult as possible for child predators and pedophiles to trade images, set up illegal websites, and find children on the Internet. At this time, I recognize the distinguished ranking member, Mr. Stupak of Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for calling this hearing, and thank you for continuing to do this investigation in a bipartisan manner. The growing scourge of what is called child pornography and exploitation on the Internet is a serious threat to all our children. I say so because what this really involves is the rape and torture of children for profit or to satisfy some dark urges. It's a well-contained problem. It was a well-contained problem before the advent of the Internet. The anonymity of the net has apparently brought out the worst in a small but growing number of Americans and allowed them to communicate with their counterparts all over the world. The statistics are startling. 80% of the pornographic images of children on the net involve children ages 12 and under. 40% involve children ages 6 and under. 20% involve toddlers ages 3 and under. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children estimates that 40% of those that view child pornography have or will abuse their own children. We've had testimony that preliminary information from studies soon to be published, that number may actually rise to 75 to 80%. People that think viewing these images is a victimless crime simply do not understand the problem. There's both good news and bad news. The bad news is that our children are at a substantial and growing risk. The good news is that if these predators can be denied easy access to the images that provoke them, and if we can make it risky for them to groom young victims, we can once again make this dangerous behavior rare. This will require the best efforts of all of us. Yes, we need to find effective ways to educate parents and children about the dangers of putting personal information out on the net. Yes, we need to greatly expand the resources available to state, local, and federal law enforcement agencies. Yes, we must make it clear to prosecutors that cutting deals for minimal jail time and/or probation is unacceptable for these men that terrorize our children and those that are caught only enjoying the images of these heinous acts. And yes, we must let judges know that they may no longer endanger society by releasing these criminals with a slap on the wrist. As members of Congress, we have a unique responsibility not only to ensure that federal criminal laws are adequate and that federal law enforcement is up to snuff, but also to deny access to the Internet of those that hunt our children and profit from the sale of these awful images. Mr. Chairman, I'm glad to see Mr. Chris Hansen here today. His Dateline NBC series on child predators has awakened America to the dangers our children face. This series of programs has shown us exactly what lengths these men from all walks of life are willing to go to abuse children. Testimony to date has revealed the following statistics. 50,000 predators are online at any given time. 1 in 5 children will be solicited online. 1 in 33 of these solicitations, just about the size of an overcrowded classroom, will result in the successful contact of a child by phone, letter, or physical meeting. I suspect that what Mr. Hansen has to tell us will provide important context for the examining of the testimony of the social networking websites that will appear before us tomorrow. I'm also pleased that you have assembled 7 Internet service providers to testify today. Certainly it is important for us to know the extent to which some ISPs have made to combat children pornography on their sites. Some ISPs have cooperated with law enforcement and are proactively attempting to eliminate child pornography from their networks, while others seem to be in denial that they have children being abused over their networks. But make no mistake about it, regardless of the level of effort expended so far, it is not enough. The problem is growing. Mr. Chairman, We have gathered witnesses that can provide some information, and some will be making very important announcements today. However, absent are the CEOs who can make the voluntary commitments of the resources and cooperation necessary to clean up the web. Voluntary action in the United Kingdom has made great strides in limiting the commercial use of the World Wide Web in that country to sell or view child porn. When these efforts began approximately 3 years ago, the UK hosted 18% of the commercial child porn sites worldwide. Today, that number is down to 0.4%. It is estimated that the U.S. hosts 42% of the worldwide for-profit sites. Since 2000, the cyber tip line operated by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has seen reports of these gruesome images grow from 20,000 to over 390,000 today. I'd like to see our internet and telecom companies commit to taking down every identified site in the United States and blocking the American predators from using U.S.-based network platforms to access child pornography from any identified site worldwide. As the author of an amendment to the House Telecommunications Bill to require broadband carriers to prevent child pornography from traveling on their networks, I'm very interested in knowing the ISP's reaction to this idea. I also want to know if they will support tougher data retention policies for parent and known child pornography. Will this solve the problem? No, but it will make a substantial dent in the multi-billion-dollar industry that seeks to exploit children for profit. It will reduce the demand that drives much of the exploitation and will save many children from this terrible abuse. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Stupak. At this time, I recognize the Vice Chairman of this committee, Mr. Walden of Oregon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I commend you for holding this hearing as we continue to investigate this terrible scourge that is on our population. I want to congratulate Chris for the work he's done at NBC to really shine light for the whole country to see just how awful this is and how pervasive it is. I think most parents don't have a clue this could be going on in their own family room where a kid is hooked up to a computer, and yet we know from our work on this committee, and you've identified from the work you've done, it's very easy to get caught up in the web of predators and perverts in this country who seek out children to do ghastly things to them. And so I commend you for that work, and I appreciate it as a parent. It has been most troubling to learn about what does go on out there. And I think most parents in America would share that they just can't believe this happens and how easily and quickly it happens. I think one of the most disturbing things, Mr. Chairman, I've come to understand out of our hearings is within seconds you can identify a predator online, or they can identify you. And the grooming process begins, the manipulation begins, and the horror begins. And we've had witnesses before this subcommittee who have told us their stories and told America their stories, and hopefully we'll all learn from that. I'm pleased to see that the industry is responding in the way it should respond with the announcements today of their work that they're going to do with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to develop both technological solutions as well as better enforcement tools and enhance their industry efforts. But I dare say there's more work to be done in terms of who's able to link to what site and who gets paid for that and how we filter that out. Some ISPs are better than others at that. And so our work continues, but Mr. Chairman, I think the work of this committee and the work of journalists like Mr. Hansen come a long way toward exposing the problem, and frankly, shining light on a problem as horrific as this one is a good first step and a good tonic. There are other things we can do legally, and there are certainly things the industries can do collaboratively to do everything we can to protect our kids and to clean up the Internet. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you. At this time, I recognize Ms. DeGette of Colorado.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for tackling this series of hearings on a very important subject. I've been amazed in these hearings, and as the mother of two girls ages 16 and 12, I've been scared about the data that we're hearing because child pornography on the Internet is burgeoning. It is exploding out of control, and it's time for everybody involved in our society to take this seriously and to look at some serious steps to controlling it. Only 1% of the images on the Internet are just simply nudity. This is very serious exploitation of children, and I'm not going to go into the graphic detail. Suffice it to say it is appalling, and it is easy to pull up on your computer. I will also say, as Mr. Stupak noted, that the number of complaints that people are getting is burgeoning as well. The Department of Justice Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force in 2003 3,700 reports of Internet crimes against children. In fiscal year 2005, it went up to 198,000. So we really do need to get a grip on it, and we all need to do it together, the media, members of Congress, and the providers. And so, Mr. Chairman, sometimes we wonder if we do any good up here, but the fact that the ISPs are making some announcement of changes of policies today, I think that's based directly on the work of people like Mr. Hansen to bring this out, and people like Paula Woodward in Denver at our NBC affiliate who's been working on this. I also think it's a result of these hearings, and I think it's commendable. I'm eager to hear these announcements, and I'm glad they're doing it, but I still think we need to do more. And as many, probably almost everybody in this room knows, and everybody on this committee knows, ever since our first hearing, I started working on legislation that would require companies that provide broadband service to keep certain records that identify their customers for 1 year. Amazingly, even though we require telephone companies to keep records of every telephone call for 18 months, so that law enforcement authorities can subpoena those records, there is no federal law for Internet communications, and there's no industry standard. As we've heard over and over in our testimony, this is hindering investigations, because when investigators want to go and get evidence, subpoena evidence, that they can find these terrible criminal perpetrators, they find that the Internet service information has been destroyed. And so, Mr. Chairman, I've been working with you and your staff, and also with Chairman Barton and his staff, to make sure that the legislation is drafted so that it protects consumers' rights to privacy. But I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I don't think that people who are raping 2-year-old children on the Internet have any right to privacy, and nobody thinks that. So we need to make our laws work. We need to make our laws work to have people retain records so that they can be subpoenaed in criminal investigations. Let me just say one thing. I'm not saying that the Internet communications should be preserved, and that's been a misunderstanding that has been out there. I'm saying that certain identifying information that is readily available and is kept now by Internet services providers should be kept for a period of time so that law enforcement authorities can subpoena that information if they need it in an ongoing investigation. I think that eradicating this pernicious practice is going to take a national and even a global partnership of citizens, parents, government, industry, and law enforcement. Every single one of us needs to be thinking about how we can do more. Every single parent in this country needs to be thinking about talking to their children about these Internet predators and how they can avoid being victims. And once we do that, just like we eradicated a lot of the child pornography in the mail in the 1980s, I believe that we can rid our computers and our children of this scourge. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you. At this time, I recognize Mr. Ferguson in New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding another hearing on this subject that our committee has brought to the public's attention over the course of the last few months. I'm thankful that our committee has made a commitment to educate the public and the government about a topic which really needs a lot of our attention. I'd also like to thank our witnesses for joining us today and testifying. The witnesses that are coming before the committee today have all made a commitment to bring this issue to light and working to protect our children who use the Internet, and for that we're all very appreciative. I also want to thank Chris Hansen for being here with us today and taking time to be here. There's no doubt that the To Catch a Predator series that recently aired on Dateline NBC came as a shock to all of us who were watching. Perhaps what was most shocking was the wide demographic of men who came with the intention of taking advantage of these children. Throughout the past few months, we've learned that there is truly no pattern, profile, or overarching characteristic of these folks. They come from all walks of life, all professions, backgrounds, and education levels, and perhaps that is what's most frightening of all. I want to thank Mr. Hansen again, and I'm anxious to hear what he has to say today about his work with Dateline NBC. I appreciate the chance to hear from the Internet representatives who are here with us today and what they're doing to stop the flow of child pornography and aid law enforcement in these types of investigations. There's no doubt that the technology to apprehend these predators has greatly advanced over recent years, and Internet services can be a tremendous resource for law enforcement in these types of crimes. While we struggle with privacy issues regarding email and Internet chat rooms involved in these cyber crimes, I look forward to finding solutions to this problem. Whatever privacy concerns are out there, we must make sure that we're doing everything we can to protect our children. Although as members of Congress, we have done right in bringing this issue to surface, and law enforcement and those in the Internet industry have taken great strides in making efforts to root out predators, there's always more that can be done. I look forward to working with these groups to further enhance the safety of the Internet while still allowing our children to use it for the many benefits that it can provide. I'm also looking forward to hearing from law enforcement and others who work in this area on what's being done in my home state of New Jersey regarding this issue. Our O&I subcommittee will have a field hearing on July 10th in my district in New Jersey. I want to extend my early appreciation to our U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, Chris Christie, who has already agreed to testify at that hearing. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your commitment to these hearings and this issue. And again, thanks to our witnesses for being here today. I yield back.
Ms. Baldwin of Wisconsin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to commend you, Mr. Chairman, and the subcommittee's work in prior sessions examining the proliferation of child exploitation over the Internet and its efforts to shed light on the abhorrent but burgeoning networks of child predators online, as well as its efforts to educate the public and especially parents about the danger such individuals pose to children who use the Internet. I, too, want to extend my welcome to Mr. Hansen and welcome to today's hearing. Your investigative series, To Catch a Predator, provides startling revelations of just how easy it is for a child predator to initiate online contact with underage persons, how there is no easy way to profile a child predator, and how persistent such predators are in looking for child victims despite high-profile sting operations such as are featured on your program. Perhaps it helps explain the staggering statistic that 1 in 5 children is solicited for sex while online. Your program helps parents understand just how crucial it is for them to be involved with their children's online activities and to proactively use filtering technologies and safety settings provided by the Internet service providers. I also appreciate the participation of various ISPs and search engines on the second panel in today's hearing. In reviewing the testimony provided for today's hearing, it is clear to me that different ISPs adopt very different policies in regard to how proactively and aggressively each filters child pornography on its networks, as well as its policies of data retention, specifically the length in which IP address assignment and customer record information are retained. I strongly believe that there ought to be national uniformity in this regard, so users of ISPs, especially children, are guaranteed a certain level of protection, and that law enforcement officers across the country are assured that their hard work chasing down child predators will not be undermined at the last minute by inadequate data preservation. I note that several panelists in our second panel have suggested various legislative options in their testimony today, and I look forward to working with members of this subcommittee to produce legislation that will address the needs of law enforcement in investigating and prosecuting child pornography cases while balancing a consumer's right to privacy. Finally, I have serious concerns regarding the adequacy of the effort of some of the search engines and what they're devoting to monitor and filter child pornography. For example, on our desks here today are the results of a Google search which uncovered sponsored links hosted by an advertiser with Google on Google's website that purports to market child pornography. I hope that Google can fully explain its AdWords service that allows any potential advertiser to create and control their advertisement through an online program. It is clear to me that such a self-managed advertising program requires a substantial amount of resources on the part of Google to screen and enforce its policy prohibiting the promotion of child pornography, and I am doubtful that current efforts are adequate. In addition, I hope that both Google and Yahoo will address the issue of online bulletin boards or groups hosted by their websites that allow the exchange of sexually explicit images and material among group members. I'm interested in any proactive efforts by Yahoo and Google to monitor such bulletin boards for their trafficking and exchange of child pornography. And I hope that this series of hearings will help lead to a reduction of such violent and heinous crimes against children, whether it is through informing parents of the dangers of online child predators, a greater oversight of federal response to the issue of child exploitation on the Internet, or new legislative proposals that would deter online pedophilia. Again, I want to thank the subcommittee and Mr. Chairman, Mr. Ranking Member, for holding this important series of hearings, and I look forward to the testimony today.
Thank you. Dr. Burgess, you're recognized for your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to join other members of our committee in welcoming Mr. Hansen here this morning and thank him for his groundbreaking work in this field. Mr. Chairman, we started this series of intensive investigations on sexual exploitation of children over the Internet, and we've heard from a range of parties: courageous child victims, journalists who bring stories to light, law enforcement agencies charged with prosecuting these predators. After each hearing, you can't help but be troubled by what you've learned, and I'm proud, Mr. Chairman, that this committee has taken the leadership role in dedicating itself to educating Congress and the public on this most dangerous situation. As a father of three, I'm unable to comprehend how people can commit these types of crimes against children. However, it is crucial for the safety of our children for all of us to know about these evils so that we can help curb this abusive practice. Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership regarding this troubling but imperative topic. It's my understanding that after our last subcommittee hearing, Attorney General Gonzalez announced that the Department of Justice, in conjunction with various Internet service providers, would study uniform data retention policies for IP addresses. Hopefully this will enhance the effectiveness of law enforcement's investigations for persons engaged in crimes against children. While some of the providers retain data for 7 years, others retain the IPs for as little as 31 days. In light of the situation, my opinion, retaining this crucial data for only a month is in itself almost criminal. I look forward to hearing from each of the Internet service providers today regarding their own current policies. I also think it would be useful to discuss some of the problems associated with long period of data retention of these addresses. I believe that the providers have a responsibility to the public, and it will be extremely useful to know what type of safety features and filtering devices each company utilizes to help protect our children. Further, it's my understanding that we may receive some new information today about new industry standards and new industry practice, and I look forward to learning that information today as well. While the providers are an important component to this problem, the government also has a vital role to play. During our last hearing, we heard how the government let a young orphan from Russia, Masha Allen, be adopted by a single man who in turn turned out to be a pedophile. There were all types of blatant clues that the government ignored, including the fact that Masha would not have her own bedroom in this man's home. Mr. Chairman, how hard was that for the State Department that investigated this man for the suitability of being an adoptive parent, a single father? How hard was it to ask, where is the little girl's bedroom? Mr. Chairman, I look forward to us having the State Department back here before this committee to help us answer some of these questions, because the problems that we address in this country, as grievous and as troublesome as they are, pale in comparison to plucking a child out of an orphanage overseas and depositing her into that type of environment. As lawmakers, it is our job to create effective laws to keep children away from harm. While at times this is an almost impossible task, we have a responsibility to children and parents to diligently undertake this charge. We must not stop until we fulfill this important obligation to our most innocent and vulnerable segment of society. Mr. Chairman, thank you again for your continued leadership and dedication to this grave situation. I look forward to working with you and others on this committee as we continue to find solutions to this most troublesome problem. I yield back.
Thank you, Dr. Burgess. I might also add that we intend to bring in some of the adoption agencies as well that were involved in that. At this time, I recognize the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This obviously is a very troubled hearing that we're having here. You would think with the advent of the Internet, it would bring a lot of positive things, but obviously this is not a positive thing we're talking about today. 1 in 5 children receive a sexual solicitation while on the Internet, and most never tell they're an adult. Between 2000 and 2004, federal criminal referrals of sexual exploitation over the Internet increased by 124%. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children's cyber tip line reported it received more than 100,000 complaints a year regarding online child pornography. On March 15th, Julie Myers, Chief of U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, said in a press conference, quote, tragically and frighteningly, the kids in these images are getting younger and the images are getting more and more violent and graphic. In former hearings, we learned through the disturbing testimony from Mr. Justin Berry, a former victim of child predators, and Mr. Kurt Eichenwald, reporter for the New York Times, that in this underground predator hunt for children on a legitimate site used by webcam owners and compare strategies and techniques. They simply compare strategies and techniques for luring children into this sordid world. Pedophiles were all isolated from society and each other in the past, but no longer. The Internet creates a virtual community in which predators reinforce their sick desires. Online portal that advertises for pay webcam child pornography, there's 585 sites. Even after the children shut down these websites, the images remain and are traded online long afterwards. We've heard about one website claimed to have 140,000 images of adolescents from their webcams. My colleagues, it is illegal to manufacture or distribute child pornography, whether in print form or online, and yet child pornographers produce images without fear or consequences. They are computer-savvy individuals, obviously, whose adaptive skills often outpace law enforcement's ability to simply pursue them. We need to strengthen our technological capabilities to track down and prosecute these criminals and instill such fear in them of capture and prosecution that they will not harm our children again. It's also our duty to educate the adults, including all the mothers and fathers, and to urge them to have close supervision. It's our duty as members of Congress to do whatever we can in our power here this morning to protect the innocent, and certainly hearing of this nature helps to inform others about this very serious offense. So I'm hoping the testimony will give us a greater insight into what efforts are currently being used to track down these criminals, perhaps also stimulating ideas for reform, either through legislative means or to tighten and enact more law enforcement. And I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
This time I recognize Mr. Inslee, Washington.
Thank you. I just want to thank Mr. Hansen for your work in this regard. You've helped move Congress. Thank you. Look forward to your testimony.
Ms. Blackburn, Tennessee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for holding the series of hearings that we are in process with today. Mr. Hansen, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your interest and concern on this issue, and I want to thank you for being willing to take the time to come and be with us today. You know, in the past, child predators usually had to operate in person. They had to operate over the phone or through the mail in order to lure children. And now the Internet, with the availability and easy access to people, these child predators have many more tools at their disposal, and unfortunately, many times they're anonymous. In past hearings, we have seen some of these tools that they use to solicit children. And today, we are going to look at the methods that Internet companies can implement to protect children from being accosted by these despicable people. I know that some companies have recognized some of the means that the predators are using and are starting to implement more stringent steps to protect children from these predators. But I want to remind the companies present at today's hearing that it is incumbent upon them to use all the available technological tools to prevent child predators from gaining access to our children. That is your responsibility. Our constituents want action with results. They do not want half-hearted efforts on anyone's attempt. This is a problem that is out of control. It is a problem that we must arrest. It is a problem that we have to get our arms around, and collectively, we have to solve this. We have to solve this. These efforts are not a substitute for law enforcement, but more and more parents, including my constituents, are becoming increasingly concerned about online child predators, and they want to see children protected. They want to know that their children are safe when they are using the Internet. They want to know that you are their partner in protecting these children. One issue that keeps recurring is how these companies are monitoring communications that would reveal either the transfer of child pornography or messages that would indicate that a user might be a child predator. Mr. Chairman, I look forward to hearing from the companies today. I look forward to hearing from our first witness, and I thank everyone for their time.
Thank you, Ms. Blackburn, and I believe that concludes the opening statement. So, Mr. Hansen, thank you for your patience. We're delighted to have Chris Hansen here with us today from NBC News. And Mr. Hansen, as you probably are aware, in this Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee, we have a practice of taking all testimony under oath, and under the rules of the House and the rules of the committee, of course, you're entitled to legal counsel. I'm assuming you don't need legal counsel today, so if you would please stand up, and I'd like to swear you in. Right. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God. Thank you. You're now under oath, Mr. Hansen, and you're recognized for a 5-minute opening statement. And be sure and turn your microphone on.
I guess I should know that. I wish I could give my interview subjects the oath. Mr. Chairman and members of the subcommittee, thank you very much, and good morning. I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, and first off, again, I'd like to thank the Subcommittee on Oversight and Investigations for inviting me to testify today on this critically important topic. I would also like to thank you for understanding and accepting the limitations in what I can say as a member of a news organization. A little more than 2 years ago, we set out to investigate computer predators, adults who go online into chat rooms and try to meet underage boys and girls. Volunteers from the online watchdog group Perverted Justice posed as young teens, home alone and open to the idea of an encounter. We rented a home in Long Island, New York, and outfitted it with hidden cameras. The decoys set up profiles in chat rooms that included pictures of boys and girls that were unmistakably underage. The decoys waited to be approached by men in the chat rooms. They didn't wait long. Within minutes, sometimes, men were trying to start up inappropriate and often obscene conversations. There was graphic language, pornographic material, and a grooming process all geared at setting up a sexual liaison with a minor. The question was, would any of the men actually show up at our hidden camera house to keep their date with a young teen? In the days before the shoot, I had wondered quietly to myself about the possibility that perhaps no one would show up. Maybe the anecdotal evidence we'd seen on the computer predator problem was overstated. But as I was stuck in traffic on the Throgs Neck Bridge, headed to the house, I received a call from my producer, Lynn Keller. She was frantic. A man was due to show up in 45 minutes, and I had to be there. Fortunately, I made it there in about a half hour, leaving just enough time to prepare to confront the man before he walked in the door right on schedule. For the next 2.5 days, we witnessed a parade of potential predators. There were men from all walks of life. Even a New York City firefighter surfaced in our investigation. Last summer, we continued our investigation, this time setting up a home in Fairfax County, Virginia, just miles from where we are now sitting. Again, perverted justice members worked as decoys, and the home was outfitted with hidden cameras. In 3 days, 18 men walked into the hidden camera house expecting to meet an underage boy or girl. There was a rabbi, an emergency room doctor, a special education teacher, and a man who walked in from the garage naked, carrying his clothes and a 12-pack of beer. Earlier this year, we set up in a home in Southern California. This time, however, law enforcement set up a parallel investigation so the men could be arrested after I confronted them. In 3 days, 51 men came to the house to meet a boy or girl and were arrested. Again, there was a wide range of characters: a teacher, a lawyer, an actor, even a federal agent assigned to the Department of Homeland Security. And there was something we had not seen before: a number of previously convicted sex offenders. One of them was a 68-year-old man who had recently pleaded guilty to having sex with a 15-year-old boy. He was on probation as he walked into our home to meet someone who told him online he was 13. Another man who showed up had an even darker past. Our investigation revealed that 20 years before he walked into our house, he had molested 3 children in the same family in Oregon. Their mother had met the man through a mentoring program. And the trail didn't end there. It turns out he had yet another conviction in Palm Springs, California, after that. The Southern California investigation drew men all the way from Los Angeles to San Diego. We wondered if this was a big city crime or if we'd find computer predators in small-town America as well. Our next investigation took us to Darke County, Ohio, population 13,000. Would potential predators travel miles of country roads, past cornfields and cow pastures to visit a child home alone? The answer was yes. Even though word of our investigation leaked out in the small town of Greenville, Ohio, where we had set up, 18 men came to our house after explicit online conversations with a decoy from the watchdog group Perverted Justice. All of them were arrested after we confronted them. It was here in Ohio that we saw something new. A growing number of men who showed up had actually seen some of our past investigations and came anyway. A 6th-grade teacher who came to meet a 13-year-old girl admitted to me that not only had he seen our past broadcasts, but he had actually discussed them with his fellow teachers. Another man who showed up at our Ohio house late on a Sunday night was scheduled to go to jail in just 4 days for earlier soliciting a child online. Since then, he's pleaded guilty to molesting a young female relative in yet another case. Our most recent investigation took us to Fort Myers, Florida, where in 3 days, 24 men showed up to meet a boy or girl and subsequently were arrested. After 5 investigations in 5 different states, we thought we had seen it all, but no one was prepared for what we saw next in Fort Myers. Late on a sunny Sunday afternoon, our hidden cameras were rolling as a 40-year-old man parked his SUV in front of our home. He had set up a date for sex with a decoy posing as a 14-year-old boy. We watched as he got out and walked around the rear passenger door. We suspected he may be grabbing some beer or food, as we'd seen some other visitors do. Instead, he takes his 5-year-old son out of the car seat and leads him by the hand up the driveway towards the back door of our house. There was an audible gasp inside the house. After he walked in, I told him who I was and what Dateline was doing. I didn't want to scare his son. Fort Myers police, who had set up their parallel investigation in a nearby home, saw the man had brought his child. A female officer scooped up the boy so he would not have to further witness his father's arrest. Police called the boy's mother, who was at work, and she picked him up at the police station. In all, nearly 130 men have surfaced in our 5 investigations. 98 of them have been charged criminally. 7 have pleaded guilty. The rest are awaiting trial and have pleaded not guilty. What do these men have in common? The majority of the men don't stand out in a crowd. Most look like the guy standing next to you in line at the dry cleaners or at the grocery store. They don't have the word predator tattooed across their foreheads. Virtually every day in this country, it seems a federal or local law enforcement agency does a sting operation targeting potential predators. Dateline has now done 5 in less than 2 years. You'd think that would be a deterrent. Perhaps for some, But for many other men, the desire to meet a teen for sex is too powerful. We've also seen men who think the odds of being caught are remote. In our last investigation, several visitors realized almost immediately what was going on. It was almost as if they were saying, oh, you're that guy, this is that show, and you want me to sit over here? What drives these men? Based on our experience and what experts tell us, there is no one-size-fits-all characterization. Some are sexual opportunists who think they can take advantage of an inexperienced but curious teen. Some are evil, they're just wired wrong. Some are sick, perhaps victimized as a child. Many share an addiction to online chat rooms and pornography sites, and eventually a compulsion to meet a young teen for sex. The anonymity and 24/7 access to the Internet can fuel this compulsion. In our experience, potential predators will sometimes talk to someone posing as a child for weeks before suggesting a meeting. There is a grooming process that often starts with casual banter, talk of hobbies, sports, or a troubled relationship with a parent. The potential predator will many times say he shared in the child's experience. Often, the man will say early on that he is too old for the teen and he could get into serious trouble if they met. Then, however, the conversation will turn explicit. He'll suggest different sex acts. A meeting is agreed to, and the next thing we see is him coming through the door. Our reporting suggests it is not hard for a potential predator to find a teen to talk to. Regional chat rooms are often where our decoys are approached. The decoy never makes the first move. It's usually only a matter of minutes before he or she is contacted. The decoys pose as regular kids with regular issues. They are open to the idea of a visit and potentially a sexual encounter. In our investigations, we have found that social networking sites are also popular trolling grounds for potential predators. MySpace, Zonga, and Facebook are places where teens often post personal pictures and information that they wrongly believe is only viewed by their friends. The incredibly good news for parents and children is that experts tell us that there is no magic way for a potential predator to enter your home via the high-speed cable. Your child must provide information for a meeting to take place. That is why a dialogue between parent and child and teacher and student is so critical. It's really the same discussion our parents had with us years ago about strangers at the playground or accepting a ride from someone you don't know. You just have to apply it to the Internet. I have brought with me today a DVD that has excerpts from some of our reporting. I'd like you to see that, and afterwards I'll be happy to entertain questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hansen, and we appreciate your bringing that videotape. And at this time, if you all would play it, we'd like to look at it.
You're watching respected members of the community who have a secret, a potentially criminal secret involving the possible sexual exploitation
Now, could we dim
children.
the lights?
Hello? Knock, knock. I can come in? Where are you? Hello?
They think they're headed for a clandestine meeting with a 12, 13, or 14-year-old.
Hello?
Hi.
Hey, hold on a second. I gotta change my shirt, okay?
Okay.
They think a child is home alone.
Where are you? Oh, okay.
Did you bring condoms?
Yeah.
Because so many children are at risk, and to demonstrate the disturbing reality of what goes on in some chat rooms, we enlisted the help of volunteers from a vigilante organization called Perverted Justice. Volunteers of this controversial group are experts at pretending to be children online in order to catch and expose potential predators. And in most states, soliciting a minor for sex is still a crime, even if it turns out the minor is really an adult posing as a child. It's 4 o'clock in the morning in an AOL chat room. This 54-year-old man, screen named Red BD, messages a 13-year-old boy named Conrad, saying, "I'm prowling for young men." What he goes on to say, and the pictures he sends are so graphic, we had to carefully edit them before putting them on television. While the two are chatting online, we conduct a background check and are absolutely shocked by what this man does for a living. And now he's in our kitchen after making a date for sex with a boy he thinks is 13.
Hello?
Hi.
Hey, hold on a second. I gotta change my shirt, okay?
Okay.
It's still day. Hold on. I gotta ask, you still gonna be up for tonight?
We'll see.
So how can I help you? What are you doing here?
Not something good. This isn't good.
Not good. I think that's kind of an understatement, isn't it? What do you do for a living?
A rabbi.
That's right, a rabbi. The man who sent naked pictures of himself is a man of God. He's a staff member at a Jewish youth educational organization.
Now, presumably, you counsel families and children in your position as a rabbi. What are you doing as a man of God, as a rabbi, in this house, trying to meet a 13-year-old boy?
Instead of answering, the rabbi asks to know who I am. But before I tell him, I want to ask him about those pictures he sent.
And you sent pornographic pictures. That's a federal offense right there.
Okay, look. You know I'm in trouble, and I know I'm in trouble. I am not interested in getting any further in trouble. Could you please tell me who you are?
I am Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC, and we're doing a story on computer predators.
No, come on, guys.
You don't want to touch it. You don't want it.
You've got to stop this.
Sit down. Sit down.
You don't have any right.
You're free to leave any time.
Unlike our previous hidden camera operations, where after leaving the house, some men were able to make a run for it,
turn around, put your hands behind your back.
This time, things will be different.
How you doing? Wait, whoa, come here. Sir?
This time, law enforcement will be waiting. This decoy, screen named Bubble Beth 2005, has a picture in her profile of a Dateline staffer taken when she was 12. There's no mistaking this is a child. Here's a man who's seen her picture and her age, but wastes no time before talking dirty. He's Kinky Man in Corona. He says he's 40 and shows Bubble Beth a picture of a penis on his profile. And as you'll hear when we read to you some of the chat log, he's making plans for sex with the girl whose profile says she's 12.
Yes, I do want to come over. Why? Would love to get you naked.
For reals? I've never done that before.
Well, would do more than that.
Like what?
Well, I would get naked too, and we would have sex.
We did background research on him and learned he's really 43-year-old Walter Edward Babst, a married man with children.
Pretty good. I'm under arrest.
Go ahead, have a seat.
Remember, he has no idea he's being recorded by our hidden cameras.
What are you doing here?
Getting my ass kicked.
Getting your ass kicked.
Yeah. I knew it. I knew it was a setup.
No, I need you to sit down, please.
I need you to just arrest me and take me to jail and execute me.
I need to talk to you first.
Because you know what? I didn't bring anything. I didn't want to do anything.
Well, why did you come here, though? Help me to understand.
Because I'm a sick son of a bitch. I've never done it before. I talk about it online all the time. I've never done anything with anybody except my wife. Ever.
And you'll never guess what this man does for a living.
I'm in education.
You're in education?
Yeah.
A teacher?
Mm-hmm.
What grade do you teach?
High school.
High school?
Yes.
Keys to your car?
I got them.
Sir, please.
Oh, God.
What's your first
In
name?
3 days, 51 men chatted online with a decoy posing as a 12 or 13-year-old, spoke on the phone, got in some type of vehicle, and drove to our house. And out of the 51, all but one were arrested.
I did not expect this many people, this many suspects arriving at the house.
Our past investigations have been in major metropolitan areas. Could it be that this is a crime that only happens in and around big cities? Or does it happen everywhere? Even in rural America. The decoy you see chatting is a 19-year-old actress. We've hired her to play the role of a young teen on the phone and on a webcam. This potential predator thinks he's chatting with our actress who's posing as a 13-year-old virgin. It's actually Dell from Perverted Justice typing on the computer. He tries to convince the decoy to do a bit of a show as well. Several times he asks the actress to show him her stomach. She finally agrees and he says, "Nice tummy, hun. I want to lick that." Then he says, "I owe you something now, don't I?"
And then he starts pulling the boxers down a little bit. Doesn't go all the way down.
Who did you think you were going to meet here?
Just this kid I've been talking to.
This kid?
I know she's a kid.
How old?
13, 14.
13. And how old are you?
Too old for a 13, 14-year-old.
Too old.
But there's one thing he doesn't want to tell us.
What do you do for a living, Jim?
I'd rather not say. Who do you work for?
I'll get to that in a minute.
No, I'd really like to know. I'm sure I'm on TV or something right now.
Why don't you just tell me what you do for a living?
I'm a teacher.
And what grade do you teach?
6th grade.
6th grade. So you teach kids about the same age as the girl you were coming to see.
He's getting out of the car.
What happens here in Florida shocks us all.
Oh, no. He brought his son with him. He's got his child with him.
He's a 40-year-old married man, Clifford Wallach, screen name PhotoFix. He's here to meet a boy who told him online he was 14.
Coming in the back door.
Holding his son's hand, the 40-year-old walks into the house.
Where'd you go?
Because we don't want to scare the little boy, we immediately tell the man what's going on.
I got to tell you something. I'm Chris Hansen with Dateline NBC.
Good.
We're doing a story on adults meeting children, and since you have your child here, I'm not going to pursue this.
Okay.
But I think you know what you were doing here, don't you?
No, I was just going to take some lunch.
My point is, because your child is here, I think it'd be best if you just went ahead and left.
Yeah, I agree. I'm never going to do this again.
Since the police know the man has his son with him,
Sir, right there. You come here. You come here. Let go of the child.
a female officer quickly takes the little boy and whisks him away so he doesn't have to further witness his father's arrest.
Please give me my son, please.
The police contact the boy's mother at work, tell her what's going on, and she comes and gets him.
You want to get a drink? Yeah?
Meanwhile, the dad is taken to jail, photographed, and put behind bars. A perverted justice decoy is playing the part of a 14-year-old named Cindy. She's talking to this man, Marvin Lackhand, screen name Crazy Trini, 85. He wants to watch her perform a sex act on a cat. He says people do it all the time. The decoy says she'll try it if he's willing to strip off all his clothes and walk into her house naked.
That's him right there. He's pulling in the driveway.
As we told you before, according to law enforcement, asking a suspect to bring or do something specific demonstrates intent.
You want to explain yourself? Grab that towel right there, please. Wrap it around yourself, and please sit in that stool. What are you doing?
Making a mistake.
Making a mistake. What is going on in your mind? You don't know. Now, what do you think would have happened, Marvin, had I not been here and had there actually been a 14-year-old girl in that next room?
Something probably would have happened.
Something like what?
Something along sexual lines.
Well, I don't know what to say, Mr. Hansen. That was quite a compelling video, and it's unbelievable that you were able to get all that on TV, and that I guess it's been shown throughout the country, and you're continuing to do this. But it certainly demonstrates the widespread problem that we have throughout our country. And I guess the first question I would just like to ask you relates to this group Perverted Justice. Could you explain a little bit about that group?
Mr. Chairman, this is a group started by a fellow named Xavier Von Erck, who lives in Oregon. And they started as volunteers who essentially would go online posing as kids in chat rooms. If they caught an adult trying to set up a meeting, they would actually post information about this adult on their website. And people could check it out and see who was taking part in this alleged behavior. We became aware of the group and thought maybe we could use their expertise in terms of their decoy work, and if we were able to use our hidden cameras and our technology to cover this crime, that we could watch them in action and get a pretty compelling picture of what's going on in some of these internet chat rooms, and that's kind of how it started.
And so that group has been involved with you since that time?
Each and every time, and I think you saw a woman named Dell there,
right.
Who is very talented when it comes to posing as a young girl or boy online, and she knows the teen speak of the Internet, as does Frag, the fellow you saw there, and they have contributors around the country who go online and they pose as kids in these chat rooms, and the information ultimately comes to the house where we are set up. Perverted Justice provides a Dateline with the transcripts so we can go through them, and I read every word of them, so I'm prepared when these guys come in. And in the last couple investigations where law enforcement had a parallel investigation going, Perverted Justice would also provide transcripts of the chat log to the law enforcement, and they would be ready to take action on their part.
Are there some specific chat rooms that seem to be used more than others from your experience?
Typically, these are regional chat rooms. There have been some that apparently have a reputation for, perhaps gay romance or, regular romance, but they're not anything specifically set up for, something that people might find different or out there or alternative, generally.
And all of these men that participated in these events, were they all prosecuted from your knowledge, or do you know?
In the very first investigation in Long Island, we didn't have law enforcement doing a parallel investigation. So, but to the best of my knowledge, the only prosecution that occurred there involved the firefighter who surfaced there, was pleaded guilty recently after facing federal charges. In Washington, there were a handful of cases prosecuted, but to be honest with you, it's difficult for law enforcement and prosecutors to come in after the fact and, based upon our broadcast story and based upon Perverted Justice's chat logs, to prosecute all these men. In Fairfax County, Virginia, they did as best they could. Once law enforcement started having a parallel investigation, then obviously, they're in on it from their standpoint from the beginning, and they're able to make their cases.
Of course, you had one gentleman who brought his 5-year-old son. You had one gentleman who came in nude. And did you have other examples of people bringing their children with them to these encounters?
No, nobody has in the past brought their children. But to see that video is stunning. But we work with 20 or so people inside this house, and these are guys who've been with me in India on investigations, in Cambodia. They've been in tough places, dark places all around the world. And I must tell you that literally after this happened, I mean, these guys are people who've seen it and done it all. I mean, these guys were in tears. That's how saddening this scene was.
From the experiences that you all had with this program, most of the predators that showed up at the homes, did most of them have prior convictions or not?
The vast majority did not have past contacts with law enforcement of any sort. In California, as you saw from the video clips, we saw the most previously convicted sexual offenders of anywhere else. We had one case in Ohio, and there had been some other cases where guys had actually been exposed by Perverted Justice. But the vast majority of men who've walked into our investigations have not had prior sexual convictions.
And it's my understanding that maybe one person showed up twice?
There was a case in Fairfax County, Virginia, the fellow who also showed up naked there. The next day, we're in the course of our investigation, and the Perverted Justice people are set up in an upstairs bedroom on their computer, and one of them calls me up in disbelief and says, "Remember the guy who walked in naked last night? He's in a chat room trying to set up a meeting with a decoy posing as a 13-year-old boy."
Unbelievable.
So they set up a meeting at a nearby McDonald's restaurant, and we of course go out there. I mean, I didn't think he'd show up.
Right.
But as we're sitting there with the crews, here he comes. He walks right into McDonald's and walks right out. I'm standing there. And he said, "Well, I'm just getting something to eat." And I said, "Well, look, this is our second time down this road, and I've got the transcripts." And he finally said, "I'm sorry, and I'm seeing a counselor."
So were you ever personally threatened in any of these encounters?
Nothing serious. I think, as you saw, the rabbi became upset and agitated, but it wasn't, a
I guess they're so
situation.
shocked they can't respond at all.
Well, I think a couple things happened. One, obviously, we've got the element of surprise in these investigations. Two, and I've seen this more and more as we've continued, I think some of these people have wanted to get help for some time and are almost relieved that they're caught. And I think because I'm genuinely curious to know what these guys are thinking, that they sometimes want to get it off their chest, even though they know it could be on national television.
I think the thing that's really disturbing about all this is that these are examples that we know about, that you were involved in, and just think of the thousands that are out there going on every day that no one knows about. And so you've got these adults chatting with young people, and we know from testimony we've had here in these hearings that they meet these pedophiles, and some people are selling sex on demand. There was a couple in Texas who were generating, I think, around $2 million a month, sexually abusing their own 5-year-old child on demand. So, well, Mr. Hansen, thank you so much for being here and for focusing attention on this important matter. And at this time, I recognize the gentleman from Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hansen, thanks for your work. In this, any females come forth? Or?
You know, that's an excellent question. 5 investigations, 5 states. In only 1 investigation did we even have contact with a female potential predator, and in that case, she did not show up. Perverted justice will tell us that they've only seen it a couple of times, maybe 4 at the most, a couple times rather, in the 4 years that they've been doing these investigations. Experts in this field suggest that while we do see female predators, and you've seen the stories about the teacher and the student, there have been a number of them, female predators prefer to know who that person is. They don't like the anonymity, and the reality is, at least in our experience, it's a male-dominated crime.
Did, at any time, or in your conversations with Perverted Justice there, were you referred to other sites to view? From time you have contact, maybe till time they would come to show up? Did they?
There were instances where the potential predator would suggest to the decoy, you know, if you want to learn about this sex act, I can either send you pictures or I can refer you to a website where this stuff exists, yes.
How often that happened or occur? Just a guesstimation.
Yeah, I mean, I think it happened, you know, 6 to 12 times over the 5 investigations.
Is it fair to say that most of these predators would have webcams?
I don't know if I'd say most, but I would say at least half have webcams, and we see more and more, and that's why in the Ohio investigation we introduced, you know, the webcam to what we were doing, and when we had the actress who obviously looked much younger than she was, and that was a very convincing thing, and once the potential predator saw that, it really engaged them.
So your decoy would indicate they had a webcam?
Exactly.
Okay. You testified that MySpace and Xanga and Facebook are popular trolling grounds for potential sexual predators. Can you explain how these websites may perpetrate child exploitation and why these social networking sites are so appealing to pedophiles?
Well, I think that you know, potential predators know that there will be a lot of children on some of these social networking websites, and you know, some of them have implemented controls, and there are ways that a child can prevent, you know, most strangers from visiting their website. But like anything else, you know, kids don't always, you know, pay attention to the rules or to the, sure, you know, the protections that are out there. So you do see the potential in some cases for contacts to be made. And we've seen adults, for instance, and there have been criminal prosecutions along these lines, who pose as a 14-year-old girl and set up an identity to make friends with other 14-year-old girls, and then ultimately set up a meeting with somebody who's supposed to be a photographer, and you know, you can imagine what happens, right, next. So you know, there is the potential.
Well, short of shutting these social websites down, can you think of any safeguards we can put on there?
You know, it's really, I think it really comes down to a parent having a realistic approach to this with their child, because kids will take the path of least resistance. You know, you can't just say, I'm going to pull the internet out of the house. I once, in the first investigation, I had a group of kids, probably 9 or 10, all 12 years old. And I said, how many of you, show of hands, has had an uncomfortable, sexually charged contact on the internet from a stranger? Almost all of them raised their hands. I said, how many told your parents? None. They're looking at the ground, they're kicking their feet. And I said, well, why not? I said, we're afraid they're going to take the computer away. You got to tell the kid, look, if this is going to happen, and it can happen, come to me, we'll contact the law enforcement authorities, we'll contact the internet service provider. The internet service providers don't want this stuff going on, you know. But you got to team up with your kid. You can't you know, just bark orders and you know, try and make the problem go away.
I take it when your decoys were setting up your sites were easy to access, nothing real sophisticated to get into.
Exactly. I mean, it's the, you know, the chat rooms that they were in were, for the most part, you know, just basic regional chat rooms.
Yeah, we have estimates. I think I used the figures in my opening statement that 1 in 5 will be contacted by a predator, and 1 in 33 is convinced to contact the predator offline through a phone call, letter, or actually a visit. Is that consistent with what you saw?
The 1 in 5 number comes from a study that's quoted by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We actually commissioned a study on our own that we had as part of the Ohio investigation that showed, you know, the number might be more like 1 in 3, depending on how you define, you know, a sexually explicit or sexually suggestive contact, you know. And the other hard thing there, obviously, is, you know, is it a sexually suggestive contact by another teen, or is it from an adult? And that's not always easy to figure out. I mean, the statistics, you know, they're estimates, and you just have to keep that in mind, that they're estimates as best as, you know, we can get them.
Well, the other figure or statistic I used in my opening, I indicated, and I think you brought it home with the man that showed up with his 5-year-old son, that about 35 to 40% of these people are known to abuse children, either their own or close relative or something like that. A new study is going to be coming out here soon. They estimate that might be as high as 75 to 80%. Would you take issue with those numbers?
You know, I have no evidence that disputes that, but I should be clear.
Your study you commissioned,
we did not specifically address how many people who partake in this behavior on the internet who also may or may not have inappropriate contact with their child. But in the case of the guy you saw in Fort Myers, Florida, just to be clear, based on his questioning by police, he was not going to, or he did not intend to involve his son in any sex act. He just happened to be babysitting that day, and the thought was that he could watch a video in another room while, you know, the father contacted the teen, or who he thought was a teen.
Did any of these individuals show up with their own video camera to record whatever was going to happen?
We have not seen anyone bring a video camera, but we have seen disposable cameras and regular cameras, and obviously there are phones that can take video, and we've seen some of that, yes.
You know, you indicated, questioning to the chairman, that you felt that some of these people were relieved to actually get caught. Where would you, any suggestions on, it seems like they're relieved to get caught, but where do you go with this? What do you do with this? How do you identify this? I guess I'm struggling with here.
I think that what happens sometimes is we all want to just, you know, characterize these people as one sort of person, one solution, whether it's the criminal justice system or some sort of treatment, and it's just not the way it is. I've seen 21-year-old guys walk in there for a 14 or 15-year-old girl, and, you know, they're profoundly lonely. I'm not defending what these guys are doing, but, you know, they're sad cases. We've seen some real, you know, heavy-duty cases of predators come in there who really, you read the chat logs and you feel like you have to take a shower. So, I mean, are there guys who could go to counseling and be better if they're watched? Yes. Are there guys who just can't be fixed by any other way than going to prison? There's that too. But what has become clear is, and the experts we've interviewed on this topic say this as well, that there's not enough treatment opportunities, there's not enough counseling out there if a guy thinks he's got a problem. And I guarantee you there are guys out there right now who are wondering about their internet conversations and wondering if they're going over the line.
Let me, it's more than the next panel, but just let me ask you this. We, our staffs, in preparation for these hearings, we put in the words preteen, sex, and video. And we did a search. We did Google, Yahoo, and MSN. And it's quite interesting the way each of these service providers handled it. By that I mean, not only did you have the website, but then you had sponsored links on some of them. And then others were very good, didn't have the sponsored links, and really you had to have a combination of words and maybe to access some of this. In your estimation, I mean, I would imagine the folks you dealt with deal with these sites all the time and must get their curiosity up and get things rolling for them. Is there something, any suggestions you would have for the ISPs coming up next?
Well, I'm not here to, take a policy position for the ISPs or on any legislation or self-regulation. But I can tell you this, that in our experience, it is not uncommon for one of these guys who shows up at our house to have a pattern that starts with, viewing pornography online, getting into graphic chats, and having an obsession or a compulsion that will ultimately lead him to try to meet a teen in person.
Thank you, and thank you again for your work.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Mr. Walden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hansen, I'm curious, how long does it take you to set up one of these sting operations, if you'll let me use that term? What kind of timelines involved? What kind of cost?
We're on site for about 5 or 6 days. So it takes the tech people, about 3 days to set up the house. I usually get in, a day before we actually start shooting just to see the setup. I mean, I've been told all about it, from the planning process on. And, we'll start getting transcripts of chat logs in, the day before, and I'll start reading them and going through them with a highlighter, and then usually we do the actual part where the men arrive for 3 days.
So in a week's time?
In a week's time.
That's from start to finish in a community?
Correct.
And what sort of costs are involved to do this?
I'm just not the budget guy on this.
Budget?
That's somebody else's budget, and it's not a cheap thing to do, but it involves the hidden camera guys who are very specialized. It involves the regular camera crews.
Let's take the camera piece out of it.
Sure.
Take the NBC on air. We're going to film this. We're going to do interviews. We're going to do all this out of it. To run one of these sting operations, absent that, would it be that hard for somebody to set up and run?
Well, I think it takes a certain skill on the part of the person playing the decoy, and that takes some training. But obviously, that's a learned skill. And I think you've got obviously it can be done because law enforcement agencies around the country are doing it. Polk County, Florida, just announced today or yesterday that they had nabbed 21 people, including some amusement park workers.
In your work, what's the fewest number of people who have shown up at one of these houses, and what's the most?
The fewest was the very first one, where 17 men showed up in 2.5 days, and the most was in Riverside County, California, where 51 men showed up in 3 days. And at some point, I mean, you could do it where you could have a guy showing up every 10 minutes, but from a practical standpoint and having time to talk to these guys and trying to get an understanding of what's going on in their heads, you have to
schedule them.
Space them apart, yeah, and no matter what, I'm sure you have people bumping into each other in the driveway, and they have long stretches where nobody shows up, and I don't mean to make light of it.
No, and I don't either,
serious
but it is
topic, but
phenomenal.
Clearly there are some moments like that we see.
And talk to me about the relationship with law enforcement. At some point in your program, you decided, we're attracting these evildoers, if you will. We ought to be doing something more about it. Law enforcement pretty interested in participating?
Perverted Justice was contacted by the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, and they said, look, if you're willing to work with us, we're willing to work with you, and if Dateline wants to do their parallel investigation, you know, that's fine too. And obviously, you know, we don't want to be an arm of law enforcement,
of course not.
and law enforcement doesn't want to be an arm of journalism.
Right.
So, you know, we felt that with Perverted Justice kind of acting as the Chinese wall in the middle, if you will, that we were able to, you know, preserve our integrity, and they were able to preserve theirs, and, you know, we were able to operate.
Have the federal agencies shown an interest?
Well, the federal agencies do this a lot, and I visited FBI offices around the country and watched what they do, and they do it very well. Thus far, to my knowledge, no federal agency has ever partnered with Perverted Justice at this point.
Have they attempted that from your knowledge?
I don't know that.
Yeah. Yeah. During the course of the email chats, does anybody observe that? Have you ever been sort of caught by an outside entity watching a chat saying something's not right here?
Or in other words, while we're acting as a decoy and a potential predator is talking to us and having an outside federal agency doing their investigation, to my knowledge, it's not happened.
Okay. And the ISPs, no involvement there?
In terms of?
They're not watching this, they're not?
Well, I think, you know, I can't speak for the policy of whatever monitoring goes on with the ISPs, but we've never been contacted by an ISP saying, you know, what are you guys doing?
Do you know from your discussions with Perverted Justice, have they been contacted when they're
not to my knowledge.
Doing the decoy role?
I've never honestly asked them that question, but it would seem that that would be something that they would talk about or tell us about.
It's just interesting how quickly you can attract 51 people to a site in less than a week's time, and this stuff's going on all the time out there, and you wonder who's kind of watching that. Not that you want a lot of Big Brother on the internet, but on this stuff, it's completely illegal.
It also speaks to, you know, how vast the internet is, and I think one of the reasons we have continued in these investigations to see guys come in the door, aside from the compulsion or the obsession, is that the reality is, you know, what are the odds that it's Dateline? What are the odds that it's a law enforcement agency, you know?
Well, you talk about how vast the internet is, and yet when you go fishing, there are a lot of fish out there. They're onto your chat room immediately, it sounds like.
Yeah.
What's the quickest response you've got?
Oh, you know, in minutes, you know, depending on the chat room, and sometimes, you know, as I said in my testimony, these guys will spend a long time, days, you know, and you got to remember that in some cases, Perverted Justice volunteers are actually out in the chat rooms before we're actually set up in the house. So if they know where we're going to be operating, they may go out, you know, a week or two ahead of time and just start
chatting,
putting them out there, chatting, and see what's going on. So there might be a case where somebody shows up who's actually been in a conversation for a couple of weeks with somebody.
But you're also, when you talk about the vastness of the internet, you're talking international. Here, you're talking about somebody who is going to drive or walk or take some mass transit to a site, so it's a very small circle, I would assume. What's the farthest away people have come?
We've had people, you know, get on a bus and travel 4 hours to get from one side of Florida to the other.
Wow.
We had it happen in California. And people, you know, we're in Riverside, and people come up from San Diego and up from L.A. and Hollywood. You know, they're willing to travel.
So it's not necessarily somebody in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, probably the opposite is true. In Ohio, for instance, you know, at least in the small town where we were, word got out that something was going on, you know, and we had, you know, probably at least a dozen, you know, local guys online who backed out. You know, but we still had people traveling up from Cincinnati or from Dayton or from, you know, 2 or 3 hours away.
So in other words, within their own network, they figured out something was going on.
Something was up, yeah. They saw a lot of activity around the house. I mean, you know, if Dark County's population is 13,000, you know, it's
somebody to drive by.
Right, Greenville is probably, you know, a quarter to half of that. So, so somebody had figured it out, yeah.
In your work as a journalist, have you ever been involved in anything more disgusting or shocking?
Well, it just you know, and I'm telling you, you know, we just really didn't know what was going to happen the first time we're going to do it. You know, but once, you know, they started coming in and it wasn't stopping, you know, it really was an eye-opening experience as to how many people are out there willing to travel and take part in this activity.
At a pretty high risk if caught.
Depending on the state and depending on what they've done, you know, we've seen of the 7 men who've surfaced in these investigations who have pleaded guilty. One man in Riverside, California, received 2.5 years, and we had another case in Ohio where a guy got 67 days time served and probation and
That's it?
That was the sentence. Now, you know, there are other mitigating circumstances, and, you know, if you look at the chat, it may not have been as graphic as some of the others, so there's a whole lot that goes into it, so you can't necessarily compare them head on. But, you know, depending on where you are and what the guy has actually done, you know, there's a wide range in the sentences. I mean, the previously convicted sex offenders in California will obviously be looking at
different issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any women involved?
No. I mean, one time in the Virginia investigation, we had somebody who identified themselves as a woman engage in a chat but never showed up. And we just have not seen it in our investigations.
And how many of the men then that have identified and participated, how many identify themselves as the age they are, or do they try to mask it and say, I'm a 14-year-old or 2, or I'm 16? Or
we don't see so much people saying that they're 14 or 16. We see 60-year-old guys saying they're 40. We see 40-year-old guys saying they're 30, and 25-year-old guys saying they're, you know, 20 or 19 to get closer to the age of the potential target.
All right. We sure appreciate the work you've done. Thanks for being here today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Degat.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hansen, thank you for your testimony and also for your investigation. As I mentioned in my opening statement, the NBC affiliate in Denver also did a similar investigation to what Dateline has been doing. Paula Woodward, who's a longtime investigative reporter there, did this, and it was the same result. They did it in conjunction with one of the local law enforcement authorities. I don't know if it was perverted justice that was the middleman, but they had like 40 or 50 guys show up at a house, and they were all arrested too. And it was, as you said, they were teachers and I don't know what all, but it is appalling. This is going on all around the country. So I bet you feel like maybe you should hang up your day job and just become an investigator some days.
Well, you know, you have seen it. You know, there are stations in Milwaukee have done it. We've seen it in Arizona. And you know, I don't think that there's any geographic region that's immune from this.
Right,
activity.
and it's just happening everywhere. You deal a lot with law enforcement agencies in your investigations, and you talk to the state, local, and federal investigators. Do they tell you about what kind of resources they have to try to find these child internet predators?
You know, it's different in each jurisdiction. I mean, obviously, the FBI has made made this a priority issue. But like any other law enforcement agency, there's a lot going on at any given time. Dark County, Ohio. You know, when we did that investigation, you know, that was a big expenditure for them to do this over 3 days, but they felt it was important, and they did it. But
do they tell you they could use more resources?
Oh, I think, yeah. Any law enforcement agency you talk to will tell you they could use more resources. But again, it's a matter of, you know, how often do you need to do it to get to the root of the problem, and, you know, I think that's different in every jurisdiction.
Yeah. Well, as you said, though, apparently people weren't worried at all. One guy showed up 2 days in a row. So just doing one sting every so often, that's not necessarily deterring these criminals. It has, as you said, it has to be a whole program.
Well, you know, as we've seen, and most recently as, you know, this spring when we were shooting in Florida, you know, guys were coming in, and before I could say, you know, I'm Chris Hansen, Dateline NBC, they were saying, I know, you know.
And yet they showed up anyway. It's almost like Candid Camera, only with criminal, they get arrested and go to jail. It's unbelievable.
I tell you, it's between, you know, reading every word of the transcripts and the interviews and, you know, the 3 days. I mean, you're pretty much emotionally and, you know, physically exhausted by the end of it. It feels like you run a marathon.
Yeah, I'm sure. Do you know, are there any estimates as to how often online sexual predators are actually able to make contact with underage children, and how often they actually then meet up with them in person?
I think that would be a tough number to quantify, just because there's so much going on out there that we don't know. I mean, again, we can go back to the figures that the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children use, or the figures that have come from our studies. But so many contacts potentially happen that you don't know about. It's a hard number to get. It's a hard estimate.
And it's a lot easier to go onto these chat rooms and talk to kids. I always say in the olden days, the sexual predators used to sort of have to lurk around the edges of parks or shopping malls. Now they can just go online, and it is a lot easier.
Well, I also think that there are people perhaps who are taking part in this behavior, at least based on our experience, who would not necessarily have been hanging out at the movie theater or the park looking for a kid, but have, slipped into this behavior because of the obsession, compulsion that they've developed.
I mean, and I was thinking about that when you were testifying, and I'm wondering if you have an opinion as to what has suddenly caused so many more men to ease into that compulsion. Is it something in our society? Is it something about the anonymity of the Internet?
Well, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, the therapists we've interviewed, who treat these men say, it's a combination of the access, which is, 24/7, the anonymity, which, makes them bold, and the fact that, there are people out there to talk to who are willing to, engage in this conversation. It's no different than addiction to gambling or anything else. It just, for some people, it develops.
And do you think those components kind of lead these men to think, well, it's all right if I do this? I mean, do they know of the men you've talked to? Do they know at some level that it's wrong and, in fact, criminal?
I think a lot of them do, and a lot of them have said to me when I've interviewed them that, I was worried, including the teacher you saw in Ohio. I was worried that I kept getting older, but the people I was talking to, were staying in the 12, 13, 14-year-old range. And he had talked about getting help, thought about it, but didn't want to admit to himself there's a problem. Subsequent to that story, we found out that he had been chatting with an undercover officer in Carmel, Indiana, posing as a child, and had exposed himself on the website, and now faces a number of other charges there. So, our decoy wasn't the only one
right.
Allegedly was chatting with.
Right. And I mean, that led me to something when you were talking to other members of the committee. It's true, of these 7 who have pled guilty, they got various sentences. They also lost their jobs.
That's correct, to my knowledge, in most of those cases.
I mean, these are people who, many of them, like you say, they're teachers, they're rabbis, they're professionals. Just by being on your show, even if they're not criminally prosecuted, they're going to likely lose their jobs.
It can have a negative consequence, yes.
Yeah, and it seems to me that's one way. I mean, that's not a law Congress can pass, but that's one way society can really let people know this is not within any possible acceptable range of normal behavior. I mean, I think if professionals know that they're going to lose their jobs as well as be criminally prosecuted, they may think twice before they go down this road. What do you think?
Well, I think it obviously ends up being, a lot of exposure. And, it's not just, the charge that they're ultimately facing. It's the detail of what was in the chat log. And in some of these cases, when you go through and read it, there's little doubt as to what, the plan was.
What their intent is. One thing, aside from legislation that we can do, states can beef up. We found out in our first hearings, for example, that in my state, Colorado, one of the first examples that came out was some perpetrators in Florida who were raping a 4-year-old online, and it was in Colorado, my state, and they tried to find the perpetrator through subpoenaing records through Internet service providers, and we found that the records had been destroyed, as they are routinely, so they never did find that perpetrator. And so that's one area that we think we can make legislation, and we're going to ask the second panel about that today. The other thing we found out there is that, like in Colorado, it was a misdemeanor to be in possession of material like that. So I think my state legislators quickly fixed that in the end of the session. So there's different things that that Congress can do. We can give more money to law enforcement agencies to prosecute and investigate these cases. But one thing that I think you're saying, and I agree with you, it needs to be way beyond just passing laws. It needs to be sort of a societal public service campaign involving the media and others.
Well, I think you've seen, and you're probably familiar with the group, for instance, and there are many groups like this, but ISAFE, for instance, who we've interviewed for our stories, and they go to schools and they have a campaign, and they have a website, and parents can go there, and it's a tutorial.
Yeah, they came and testified. Yeah.
But they'll tell you, this is step by step how you talk to your child about this.
Right.
And your best defense, and I keep going back to this, and it's not a cop-out, it's really, I really believe it, that the best defense is to start at home, and it starts with the parent and the child.
There's a group out of England who I met with, and they're actually it's part of an international group. They've got a public service announcement that they're showing in England that could be used everywhere. And Mr. Chairman, I think we should get them in and show this PSA. Maybe you've seen it, Mr. Hansen. It's targeted at these young kids, and about how if you get in a chat room and somebody starts taking you down this path, how you can get out of it.
Right.
It's really an intense PSA. Oh, it's going to be shown tomorrow.
Right.
And, the response around here is always really snappy, and I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But it's an incredible public service announcement. I think your network and other networks should really look at doing this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Stern.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hansen, when your group set up these chat rooms, are there chat rooms that almost everybody in this country knows about? I mean, I have 3 children, and they were on the Internet, and I cautioned them about any chat room they were in. But, I mean, is there like 2 or 3 chat rooms that everyone goes to? I mean, how did you find which chat room to go to, or even which one to concentrate on?
In the vast majority of cases, it's just regular old, regional chat rooms, accessible through AOL or Yahoo.
So you went to AOL and then worked.
And there were other ones too. I mean, perverted justice, sort of have a sense where, there'll be a lot of people, where a lot of people from different walks of life will see this profile, which contains a picture of a boy or girl that's unmistakably underage, and they just sit there and wait, and you'll see it. Hey, what's up, and what's going on, and how old are you? Wait, you're way too young, and then it goes on from there.
So it's easy for a 12 or 13 year-old person to find a chat room easy?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some of these chat rooms, and the rules, change pretty quickly because the ISPs and are trying to obviously do their best to prevent this sort of activity from happening. But it's my understanding that if you want to get in a chat room, and even if there's a restriction on age, kids are crafty and they can get in there if they want to.
So if somehow we could set up, either through a software program or through, just like we rate motion pictures and we have ratings for video CDs, and we have ratings now, where some type of ratings for video games, should chat rooms be set up with some kind of control from the Federal Trade Commission, or in your opinion, should software be developed to set up categories where you
Well, I can tell you this, that, from a parent's point of view, that, software already exists that you can get for not a lot of money, that you can set up at home, that will actually sense if your child is giving out inappropriate or personal information. It will then email you on your BlackBerry, and you can pick it up and say, this is not good, I'm going to call home, and, what the heck are you doing?
What's going on? That's excellent. I
It
didn't
is.
know.
I mean, there's a lot of this stuff is out there. It's you know, parents just got to know about it, and first of all, you have to realize that it's an issue, and that it could happen in your home, and it could happen to your kid, even though they're a good kid. But you know, you need to have the discussion.
So we should encourage manufacturers, computers, to provide that software. Maybe
it's there.
Part of it could be just like you get your Microsoft Windows part of the computer package. You maybe will get this too, sort of like an S chip in the TV, or V chip in the TV. You would have this software program be part of the package that you would buy, and the parents or even anybody that bought the computer could make this software available and could type in an email. So then that would be automatic, and then when the child goes on, he or she wouldn't know that they're being monitored by their parents.
Yeah, that technology exists as we speak.
Okay. Well, I think all of us should realize and thank NBC commend it for its trailblazing journalism here. I think what you're doing is highly commendable. I think you could take this same type of sting operations many other areas too. And I'm sure it's crossed your mind.
It has.
And the possibilities are endless. Out of the number that you saw in California and Florida, I thought it totaled about 190 people that came in. Just refresh my memory. How many?
51 came in California, and 24 came in Fort Myers, Florida.
Okay, so then that's 75.
Correct.
And you touched briefly on the profile of those 75. Some had past criminal activities, verdicts of guilty on there, and others were not. Was there any remarkable characteristic that you saw in terms of education of these people, where they all seemed to be across? They either were rabbis who always had a college education and beyond, or probably a doctorate, and a fireman who maybe had just a high school education. I mean, was there anything in the education area that came out at you?
Not really. I mean, what most of these guys have in common is that they don't stick out of a crowd.
Yeah, they're just
you wouldn't, if you rode on a bus with them or on a train, you know, there's regular workaday guys.
Yeah.
For the most part.
Having raised 3 children, and lots of them do go on chat rooms just to chat with their buddies or chat with other people. And I understand you have 2 children too. What have you told your children or your wife? Or I mean,
well,
after this, you obviously
unfortunately for my kids, their dad's a little more involved in it than some of the others. So I know most of the scams before they're even brought up at home. But in all seriousness, you know, they've watched the shows with me, and
so
I've had this serious discussion and the continuing discussion with them. They happen not to be at this particular moment all that into IMing or chat rooms. They're more into, you know, the computer games, so it just hasn't been that big of an issue for us. But you know, again, I just try to practice what I preach and say, you know, look, you guys, this stuff is out there, and you have to be aware of it, and there are going to be people who try to trick you, and I think kids don't like to be tricked, and if you frame it that way, you know, you should get some response.
Yeah. Well, I think that's good, and I think it's also great that you brought to bear the understanding on this committee that there's software out there that monitors your children for what they're doing and can email automatically to the parents. So in a way, the market can take care of this, is what you're saying.
I certainly think that there are, you know, constructive, you know, software programs that we've seen and that we've showed in some of our stories that as far as we know, work quite well.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Inslee.
Thank you. One of the more chilling aspects of this story and other discussions that we've had in previous hearings is about the grooming that goes on of these predators that try to appear sort of innocent as they begin this relationship with their targets. Is there anything that you can advise parents about how to advise kids about that, to either to spot it, what the warning signs are?
Well, I think if you see, for instance, you know, a package arrive for your child, and in it is a you know, webcam, and they're dodgy as to where it's come from. If phone calls start to arrive from, you know, strangers, if suddenly they've got a cell phone and they're not quite clear as to how they were able to get that cell phone. I mean, those, the experts tell us, are all signals that somebody is trying to develop a way to communicate with your kid. You know, you saw with the Justin Berry case in Kurt Eichenwald's story in the New York Times how, you know, that webcam for him, you know, was a gateway into this activity. So I'm not saying there's anything inherently evil with webcams, clearly, but you know, if this stuff starts showing up at your house, and you don't know who's sending it, that's a signal. And we've seen it in our reporting that those are the kind of things that a potential predator will offer.
I wanted to ask you about what sort of observations you have for law enforcement. You've become an expert in sting operations in a sense. Do you have any sense of what's possible for law enforcement? I mean, should we have, you know, 20 sting operations like yours up and running in this country at all times to have a more effective deterrent? Is that possible from a cost standpoint? Is it effective? Is it an effective deterrent? It's surprising to me that you have these shows on and these people still keep showing up on, not only as viewers, but participants. Do you have any thoughts about, for law enforcement, what they can do or should do?
Well, I think law enforcement across the country is doing sting operations like this, you know, virtually on a daily basis. You know, as I mentioned before, the FBI, on average, arrests, they call them travelers, a traveler every day. We just saw the results of the investigation that the Polk County Sheriff's Office did. So, you know, there is a lot of this going on. And if you were to, you know, Google the subject, you would see in towns across America where this is happening. You know, I don't know, you know, the extent to which it is a deterrent. Obviously, for some people it will be. For others, as we've seen in our stories, you know, the compulsion, the obsession is strong. We had a guy in California, for instance, who drove by the house and saw a previous arrest, called the perverted justice decoy and said, hey, there's cops in front of the house, what's going on? She said, no, it's just a drug bust next door, it's all done, come on over. Comes in. Turns out perverted justice had caught him once before, and he had seen a previous story on Dateline. And this guy walked in the house anyway. Now, whether that speaks to his lack of intelligence or the addiction or compulsion is probably a little bit of both. But, you know, these guys, once they get in their mind, they want to do it, they want to show up.
Right. Did you have any sense about sites that were particularly effective, social sites that were either effective or ineffective in providing tools to protect kids? Did you have any sense of different approaches taken by sites that may work or may not work?
You know, again, you know, I think the best approach is the approach at home from a parent to a child. And you know, if you're going to go on a social networking site, be smart about it. You know, don't let just anybody in. You know, what we've seen in some of these cases is that, for instance, the decoy will have a profile set up in the chat room, but then after the discussion goes on, the potential predator will say, well, do you have a spot on one of these social networking sites? And the decoy will say, yes, and I'll let you on or I'll accept you, and, you know, then it goes from there.
Gotcha. Thank you very much for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bath.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one question of you, Mr. Hansen. In the course of your investigation, did you uncover a lot of individuals who communicated who were under the age of 18?
Most of the men who surfaced in our investigations, you know, were, that I can recall, I don't think there was anybody under the age of 18.
So it's your conclusion, or your observation rather, that this communication is not occurring then between people under the age of 18 who are looking for other people under the age of 18 to have a relationship with.
I understand. I don't think I can draw that conclusion because, you know, our story focused on adults who were seeking to meet children.
Sure.
We really didn't
well, when perverted justice, they were your screen, is that right? Perverted justice was
our decoys, correct?
Yeah, your decoys. Are they testifying, Mr. Chairman, or not?
No, they're not.
Okay. Well, I'm just curious to know, when they did the screen, what percent of the screen turned out to be people who were under the age of 18 versus over the age of 18, and whether or not, I guess my question, there is no follow-on to that, because if this is a problem that is associated mostly, if not totally, with people over the age of 18, and that there really isn't much interest in this kind of communication for pre-18 to pre-18. It's an interesting observation. But are you suggesting that this might be the case or not?
Well, I just don't think we know that. I mean, obviously there have been highly publicized stories where, you know, kids have hooked up online, whether it's 18 and 16 or 19 and 16, as we saw the allegations most recently in Texas. But in our investigations, you know, the way they're set up, the decoy posing as a child is in a profile in a chat room and waits to be contacted. So I can only tell you that in our cases, we haven't seen, to my knowledge, a lot of contacts from 15, 14, or 13-year-olds. The contacts are coming from adults in our investigations.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Bass. And Mr. Hansen, I'm sorry, Ms. Baldwin.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Thank you very much for your testimony. And watching the images earlier, it shows such a great example of how investigative journalism is serving such an important educational role and prompting, I hope, frank communication between parents and their children. What frightens me, of course, watching those images is the fact that everyone says this is just the tip of the iceberg, and you think about how it's terrifying to think about how many children are being exploited and there's not a camera crew when the person walks into the house. We've had a few questions about the limitations on law enforcement and the resources that are being dedicated to this. I'm wondering whether in the context of your show or perhaps through public service announcements, as we've talked about, that there are, if there's advice offered for parents or kids of what to do when there's an inappropriate contact, inappropriate internet contact. Who to call, who to alert, who to ask for an investigation. It seems to me that that's sort of the missing ingredient in this conversation of, okay, you're promoting the dialogue between children and parents to prevent this, but what if you haven't prevented it? What does a parent do next?
Well, I think in this time when this subject is getting so much publicity that I would just be shocked if there wasn't a police department or if a police department wasn't interested in investigating a case like this. I mean, you know, every day another police department sets up, you know, a division dealing with this sort of thing, from Los Angeles to New York and everywhere in between. So, you know, you report it to the police, you report it to the internet service provider, and I would say in most cases something will happen.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Ms. Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I've got just a couple of questions. I'm going to continue on Ms. Baldwin's line of talk because we know that many of the service providers are beginning to partner with PTAs and are looking at a multimedia, if you will, way of communicating with parents, so that there are things going home with children in their backpacks and their mommy packs that they take home, that they're looking at partnerships, printed material, TV ads, as well as online information. And all of that is good. But I want to look at what we should also consider doing as a legislative body. And I have been so intrigued with your partnership with Perverted Justice and the work that they have done. And what I would like to hear from you, and you can submit this in writing or your staff, but I would like to know what suggestions those guys that have actually worked the keyboard and assisted you with this investigation, Perverted Justice members and also your staff, as they have worked through this process, I'm certain from time to time they've had a little nugget where they've said, you know, they probably could do this, or you know, I bet you they could write this into the program that would boot something out. And I would love to know if you were willing to share those nuggets with us of what their thoughts have been, what their suggestions would be for us, and what they would have wanted us to know as we have worked on this hearing.
Well, I can tell you this, that the people we've met from Perverted Justice are very savvy computer people, and I'm sure that if you requested it or if we requested it, I don't want to speak for them, but I'm confident that they'd be more than willing to assist you and give you any thoughts they have on it.
And your staff also. I know
Absolutely.
It takes a dedicated and hardworking staff to be able to work through a 2-year project, a 2-year investigation, and that there have to be there has to be an incredible amount of knowledge gleaned that would serve us well.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ms. Blackburn. And Mr. Hansen, we want to thank you once again for being with us this morning and afternoon, and for bringing us a new perspective on this whole issue. And we look forward to continue working with you and following your investigative reports. So with that, you're dismissed, and best wishes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it. Thank you all.